Well, let's get started, Rose. Well, kia ora tātou. Ko hui mai nei I runga I tēnei karanga kaupapa te wā. Te whakarongo ki ahorangi tuarua Rosalina Richards. Nō reira, ka hoa atu I au ngā mihi ki te runga rawa, I roto I tēnei wā o puanga puaka matariki rānei. Kua kapohia I rātou nā te kupinga o taramainaku. Nō reira, ko tēnei te tihi o ngā wiki whakamutanga o te tau. Nō reira, ka huri te kei o te waka ki te kaupapa I moia tātou. Mō tēnei wāhanga o coastal people, te whakarongo kia koe Rose. Good afternoon, just everybody, and welcome for this is the next presentation within our seminar series. And this one here is from Rose as well, when focused on trying to understand the connections, the thinking within one of our platform themes. So Rose is one of our theme leaders. She's also a co-deputy director too, but in here she is, I'll just read out what we have for our description of the restoration theme. So restoration is one of our platform themes that sits within our waka or our canoe, which is our research program. The platform themes sit across the two hulls of coastal people with a marine focus and a wellbeing focus. And there are three platform themes: restoration, understanding, and connecting. And today we are focusing in on restoring. And so the restoring platform theme focuses on restoration that acknowledges the past, uses knowledge of the present and future to guide action that provides meaningful benefits today and for generations to come. With the inevitability of change, we will identify local initiatives to strengthen social, ecological systems and support coastal people as they prepare for change. We will build resilience, maximising the impact of restoration by focusing on critical processes and species. The broader effects of future-focused ecosystem restoration on coastal communities will also be examined. And so before I hand over the rākau to Rose, it's great to see everybody here at the time of coming into our last sort of couple of last week of the Māori year too, is a special time to think about those people who may have passed who are important in your life or lives of the recent past or the distant past, as well as things that might have been the burdens you may have been carrying over the year too. It's always a nice time to be able to reset and rethink as we look forward to the rising of matariki again, or puanga, which has already risen, like in southern skies or in other places too in the western horizon. And so we'll start our presentation before handing over to Rose with our karakia haia te awa. And I can pop it up on the screen if people want to say it along with me, and you're welcome to. I'll just blow it up a little bit bigger if I can find my mouse. Here we go. Haia te awa, puta I tua, puta I waho, I te pakiaka o te rākau, o maere nuku, o maere raki, o maere o te māra whenua, I ruka tāne, I raro tāne, te raki ihi o tāne, paku paku o tāne, noho ka o te ariki, hoatu e tāne, ki uta. And I'll hand it over to you, Rose. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Emery. Do you want me to push record at my end, or are you able to do? I'm not sure who's hosting. I'm
recording us.
Sweet. Thank you so much. I love our karakia, and I also realised partway through it that I'm still a little bit out of breath from trotting over here pretty quickly from the staff club. So I will try and remember to breathe as I speak. But I think that's also possibly a good place to start, is with the breath, and to say everyone needs to be breathing. It is the middle of our academic year, but also coming to the end of our matariki year, and a time where energy can be a bit variable, sometimes pretty low, but also a really exciting time for creation and planning. So this was such a timely opportunity, really, to start thinking about restoration and who we are as a theme, but also, you know, getting ready to move into whatever happens next for us. So I will share my screen with you. So our beautiful slide here, and I want to acknowledge David Thompson, who is our head of strategy here at the university, also happens to be an amazing cook and photographer. So he took this, I think, from the Polaris, and it is Rakiura, and I thought it was a sunrise, so I had a whole spiel this morning, and then Pritchie walked past my screen. No, it turns out it's a sunset. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with it. Because as we come to the end of Matariki, as Anne-Marie said, it is the sunset of that year, the opportunity to reflect and celebrate, I think, the things that have happened and the learnings that have happened, which for me at least have been incredible within this core space. So as Anne-Marie mentioned, I have a couple of hats within the core, but today I'm very firmly in that restoration theme co-lead space and thinking about our journey going forward. So within our little team, there's myself. We're really fortunate within the core to have dedicated leadership time for our theme leaders. I think a lot of our research spaces, we just somehow tack the research lead stuff in somewhere else, as well as all the operational time that we've built into our grants. So it's something I really appreciate about the core, that there is actually dedicated space to do that thinking about leadership, strategy, planning for what is really, I guess, a program of research within the core. I'm also a PI on one of our projects, and my amazing team in Whalafololoa, which is really looking at our Pacific communities down here in Dunedin, and well-being and engagement with the natural environment. Sitting alongside me as co-lead is our wonderful colleague Gaia, who is looking very saintly, I think, in this picture. That's what happens when you don't get to come along to the Pukoriroa, Gaia. I get to say whatever I like about your picture. And she's also a principal investigator on our first project, actually, that came through and tested a lot of our systems in terms of project assessment and project approval, etc., in terms of the work that she does with power and that restoration of particularly that taonga species being an area of interest. Of course, our mentor, and we're incredibly lucky to have Wendy as our mentor in terms of the knowledge that she brings. She's also the chair of our research advisory committee and the core as a whole. So a lot of experience, and both in the marine space, but in the research space as a whole. And I was Googling her to try and find a photo and found her Wikipedia page, and now I'm thoroughly intimidated by my colleague Wendy. She's just incredibly impressive. And so in terms of the project space, the people who are bringing projects through, we also have Matt Desmond, and this is again a photo I pinched off the internet, and he looks about 12. So if we have an updated picture of Matt for the core, that would be amazing. And Matt's project around kelp restoration and his team is coming through the review process at the moment. So in terms of our starting point and our original application, this is the body of work that was placed under that restoration theme, and using some of that language that Anne-Marie spoke about earlier on. And also, I think within our core, well, this is the specific project sort of come through that initial process. There's also been a whole lot of other people who have shaped these projects, shaped the restoration space. Our early meetings of what is restoration going to be, there were definitely a larger team of people from across the core, and also across the different themes and tumu as well, which is really important to acknowledge as we go forward. So as Anne-Marie said, some of the language around restoration. So our original application was really setting intent, and for those of you who wrote into it, you got a paragraph or half a paragraph to try and describe a whole project that you were going to do, that was driving towards that intent. And so, you know, that sense of restoration being in the local sense, but restoration to give us resilience against what is a global issue in terms of many of the things that we're seeing. In terms of the human side of things, so that's really my, I'm more the people bit of that relationship with the environment, thinking about what restoration is and how that act of restoration might be important for us as we manage the change that are happening. And I like that word from the original application was about you know, feeling powerless, and what do we do, as my daughter says, as the world burns. She's 15 and that's how she feels about some of the things that are happening. But what can we find that is meaningful, a meaningful response to what we see, which is a very human thing, a very human need in this type of work. Thinking about what we do to achieve that. There's you know, we can't do everything. We'd love to work across so many different spaces, but trying to focus in on what are some of the critical things, what are some of the processes, habitat, species that we might be looking at that are particularly important in that space, and again that importance of the act of restoration. So how might we measure or describe what the human good stuff that can come out of restoration, and that's where our linkage with our monitoring colleagues is when we move towards restoration activities, what has been effective, how was it effective, or what way was it meaningful, and why was it, you know, why was it so? So that's that intent that sat really behind the projects that have come through the space. And a year has gone by, but it seems to have gone in a flash. And it seems like we've been working really hard to get to a point where we've got those first projects pretty much underway, getting started, moving, and now we get to the point where that first establishment stuff for our theme is in place, and moving kind of that energy, just as we sort of change through the year at Matariki into, okay, well, what does that future planning look like for us? And so I think you'll see from this, we probably have more questions than what we have answers at this stage, in terms of where we are at as a theme. And I just wanted to be, I guess, authentic about that. We've pushed a lot of energy into project creation and trying to do the very best that we could. And now we're stopping and reflecting and going, okay, so what's possible in this next realm? And we have a little shadow picture of the Va'a, which is where I work, which is just a subliminal message to you all. That's a great thing. But what I wanted to show, and again, Anne-Marie mentioned this about as we prepare for the next stage, being really aware of the way that we've set ourselves up. And that was very purposeful in terms of achieving the outcomes that we want. So we have our two hulls, and I'll come back to this a little bit later about how we've managed to, I guess, fulfill the desire to have this balanced craft, this craft that is able to move through marine and wellbeing spaces really smoothly. Across, at the ends we have our tumu, our training and our monitoring, which are a little bit different to our hulls, but vital for our core going forward. We've got our three platforms across, and so I think one of the lessons over the last year has been just how aligned a lot of the work that's happening in the different themes is. To restore something, you need to understand it. And a lot of our restoration, particularly in the human side of things, is about restoring connection. I think as we were writing some of the projects, when the question was, how is this linked, you could probably pick up some of the projects and pop them from one theme to another, because there is a strong alignment for many of those spaces, which is exciting. And again, in that visual, you see we want to be balanced across both that marine and well-being as a theme as a whole. How are we incorporating both of those spaces in our understanding of restoring? Lost my mouse. There we go. And our projects sit right across the top of those. And I think at the end of this first year now, we have actually a suite of projects that have come through in all of the different themes. And so amazing to stop and reflect and look at how that looks now. Connections into our innovation and our voyaging spaces, what is possible in the next wee while to build in those spaces. And also, as we travel as a theme, making sure that we're aligned with our strategic context, with our stated values around mana, meaningful, authentic, natural action, kaitiakitanga, that we're really responsive to our governance and our research advisory, and also our amazing management team led by AJ as well. So we have, this fantastic structure that we can come back to and go, okay, well, we had a run at it this first year. What have we learned that we would take forward into that next stage? And so part of this is thinking about our, we're on a journey as a core, and that, again, it's an amazing thing about the core is that it's 8 years, which is pretty unheard of in terms of research grants, and 8 years plus. So we can feel empowered to think about how we might go beyond 8 years in terms of core rollover. So again, this is sort of our part of our way of seeing how we move forward. For me, it's been really powerful thinking about, in particular, our pace, our goals, and for me, this bit here has been really important in shaping my understanding of where we're going. So this initial stage around preparing the gardens, and so the story that sort of sits behind this, or my understanding of it, is this idea that before you go on a journey, before you build a waka, first plant your garden, because you're going to need to feed all the people who come and work on your waka. You're going to need some food to take with you on your journey. You're going to want to not arrive at someone's house with nothing left, and maybe have some food to share with them when you arrive there. So that sense of there's actually a lot of groundwork that needs to go on to really have a finely tuned, effective journey. And so for me, this helped with that first, not impatience in the first year, but kind of like, we want to be going. How do we get this? How do we make this work? And actually giving ourselves a bit of grace to go. Actually, we're still trying to figure out some of this, because we've stated that we want to be different from business as usual, and what that means is we have to create the unusual. And test it and figure out whether that's going to be fit for purpose too. So it's quite an experimental, curious space of creation of research, because we are trying to hold ourselves accountable to slightly different metrics and approaches than you would possibly see in business as usual research. So this idea of preparing the gardens, getting our first projects up and started, looking and understanding across our teams what skills we have, where we might be needing to build some capacity to be ready for what comes next, and really, I guess, a year of relationship building, and also a bit of trust building as well, so that you know that you can come to a space and go, I don't really understand what that means, and people are going to help you learn rather than that not be an exclusion necessarily of you as an important part of that team. So preparing the gardens, I think that's part of some of the stuff that we're doing at the moment, understanding who we are as a core, understanding and continuing to develop our strategy, moving through into balancing the waka. And so we've been quite, we've had more investment initially in that marine science, or what would look familiar or more familiar in a marine science space, with additional well-being kind of brought into that space. So looking at, okay, so as we go forward, who might need to be involved, how do we build our teams so that we've got a variety of expertise that can provide input from all those different spaces. What we've got in the strategy there, the next step around gifting the fine mat, that comes from, I guess, a Pacific worldview that fine mats are currency, they are wealth, and they are one of the highest gifts that you can give. And you can give sort of a workday mat, which is, popped on the floor and wandered over. But at the higher end, the things that are given for weddings, for funerals, for births, are our fine mats, which are works of art, which are beautiful and have a history and a whakapapa. And so the sense of when we come to rebid, we've got a stable waka, we're sustainable in terms of our gardens are prepared and functional, we've got the skills that we need, and that when we, as we reach into the Pacific more, that we're going with a fine mat, with teams who have worked together, who are really strong in their collaboration, with tools that we've tested out and we know are going to be really great in this space, and with relationships with key people on the ground over there as well. So that was that sort of sense of wanting to step into new spaces with I guess real strength and with a beautiful gift. And I think, in terms of the core, we're about research excellence, and we're about being really great at building capacity and capability. And so we want to be operating at the level of a fine mat. And it takes a little bit of, it takes some learning and some investment of time to get into those spaces. And so as we're creating what comes next for us, as I said, we're kind of building our platform of what is it to be a researcher or a research project that comes out of our core platform. And that means recreating some of the world that we live in as researchers. So setting our own ideas and direction for what is research excellence. How do we assess things? What kind of criteria would we use to assess it in a way that meets those goals around research excellence? Things like environmental ethics, which Chris has been leading out on, and our monitoring team have just started to bring to the table about, well, what would great data management look like? So I think drawing on all of these things that we're co-creating as a core will take us into, I guess, a leveling up, I guess, of the types of things that we're looking to do, the things that help us create innovation and transformational change. So one of the things I think that a curiosity, a question that has sat with Wendy and Gaia and myself for probably since the beginning has been about restoration. And that word restoration and the way that communities around New Zealand are interpreting that, because there are a huge number of place-based restoration projects that are happening. What is happening? What kind of drivers are sitting behind those projects? Are there things that we as a core could be doing to support those community-based restoration projects? So those are some of the questions that are sort of sitting with us at present about understanding our place as a restoration team within the broader, both national context, but also there's some amazing writing coming through at the moment that about what restoration could and should mean. And so we can draw on that as well. I think perhaps not unexpected, but possibly a little unexpected coming into into the core. It sounded like a lot of money right at the beginning, but the reality of the learning over the last year is that it is a financially constrained space. And so I think while our initial ideas have been around how to get our projects to fit within the budget that we have inherited, then this next stage to fulfill the aspirations that we have, really being looking at the other funding opportunities that are there to support the type of work that we want to do. And I think, for me, coming from health, really thinking through how we tap some of those larger health funding opportunities that I think would be aligned with some of the work that we do. So that, the reality that at a pragmatic end, the financial possibilities within the core are part of that thinking about things going forward. Acknowledging uncertainty, I think that is something that I've really enjoyed in terms of our work in the Theme Leaders Committee, actually being able to come into that space and say, I'm not quite sure how this is going to work. What do you all think that, how could we figure this problem out? How could we find a new way of doing this? And that is definitely true as we transition from projects, which are very clear. We all write projects and understand how that works, into, okay, well, if we're thinking cross-theme, cross-tumu, incorporating sales, how does all of that come into the next set of projects, and how would that process look? And as part of our original application, we did talk about wayfinding leadership, and we're very fortunate to have authors from that book in our wider collaborative team. But it is something that I certainly keep coming back to, about if we don't know the way, we come back to our values, and we come back to our vision and mission, and with the smart people who are around the table, and that is true of every single CPSS thing I've been to. There's a lot of big brains around the table, and we figure it out, and we feel empowered to figure it out as well. So I think in terms of where we are at Restoration now is really about a new beginning and a new co-understanding of what it means to be in restoration. And I think, talking to Wendy and Gaia this week, really it's a call of welcome from us to our wider core collective, and to others in the community or elsewhere that you think would enjoy being part of this, would enjoy being part of this space and get something out of it. So that is really my final slide, is welcome. It's not one of those meetings where if you show up, you all have to be involved. It's not one of those, but really welcome. The call is out from our space. If there are people who are interested, then we'd love to, I guess, go on this next stage of the journey with other people as well. So that's me, Anne-Marie, but I'd really love to hear from some of our colleagues, I guess, if there's anything that within that resonated with you, or the journey that you're on as a theme or as a researcher, and or the core as a whole. I'd just love to hear about other people's thoughts. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Rose. Thank you. And I think that sort of some of your last comments were sort of a half joke, not a joke. If you turn up, you're in restoration. No. Yeah, that's right.
I'm taking a screenshot right now.
No, that's fantastic, Rose, and to hear your the restoration themes view around where you're tracking, how you've been tracking so far, and where you're wanting to head into as well. And as we have our website too, these are all, which is coming. These will all be available online too for others to be able to connect in with. But let's open for any questions or comments that people might have for Rose in relation to her presentation, and anything outside of that as well.
I'll kick it off. Thanks, Rose. That was super interesting. And something you said in it, this is more of a comment really than a question, but it really struck with me. To restore, you need to understand. And it's totally true. I'm thinking about Gaia's work and Matt's work, and, just how beautifully that ties in with the understanding theme. And restoring these populations, you really need to know how those populations are going to look in the future as well as the environment changes. So yeah, I'm excited about the links between our two themes. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brady. I know there's definitely been times where we're like, oh, should we be, yeah, where do we actually sit? And I think the same too with, things like well-being. I think we've got a lot of questions about how does our marine environment relate to our well-being? Do we have the language to even describe how important that is, both at an individual level, but also as at a community or a city or a town level? Some of this is creating language or narratives that we can start to capture that importance so that it becomes part of the evidence base that informs decisions that are able to be made. So yeah, it's exciting.
Kia ora, Rose. That was great, thank you. And yeah, I just want to echo what Bridie said, really. I think that all of us thinking about our different projects, and when we're writing them, it's like, well, which theme should we put it in? And I think that's a real strength of the projects, but also of the structure of the core as well, right? Because it's embracing all of these different things. We realize they're all interconnected. So I think we all think that. So it's good. It's good to hear other people say it. I really appreciated you showing the animation again. It's so lovely. I just love watching it. I think it should just be on a constant loop places. And I think it's really good for reminding us of the structure, but also about our aims and values as well. And, so we should never get away from that stuff. And I think it's really important to think about what's guiding us. And the other thing I really appreciated was your slide about the strategic context and those analogies you put in there. I hadn't seen that before. So that was really, really nice. I think it's really the analogies about the different stages. And I think that's really empowering for us to think about, the early stages, the planning stages in the garden, and then balancing the waka. That's a really nice analogy, which is probably when we're really getting into our stride and we're really seeing some results as well. But then thinking about those different stages as well and the vision for the future, that's super exciting to think about what the core is going to be when we rebid in 8 years' time, and how awesome that's going to be. So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. And I know for me, I get pretty detail oriented and kind of bogged down in the project stuff. And so it's just such a great refresh to go back to the strategic space and acknowledging Anne-Marie having driven a lot of that strategic thinking to go, oh, okay, I'm part of something bigger. There is this amazing sense of purpose and meaning of something that we can do as a whole. I have a colleague who works in actually in kind of palliative care, end of life care, and he defines spirituality as identity, meaning, and purpose. And we don't talk about spirituality a lot in research often, but when I think about identity, meaning, and purpose, it often, if you've got a beautiful story of a mission and values and strategy, I think it does lift us into that bigger purpose, that almost a spiritual space. And I don't think we should be embarrassed about drawing from all the types of strength that we can draw from. And if it's a spiritual bigger picture purpose, then sometimes those are the things that get you through the tough days at the office. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. And that's one of the lovely things about these meetings. I know there's kind of the core office, and so maybe you see each other more. If we're tucked away in our offices and we're doing other things, whatever, it's just so lovely to be able to drop in on a Friday lunchtime and hear and feel supported and be part of this wider group. That's really, really cool.
Hey.
Yeah, Kia ora, Rose. Just really echoing what's been said already. It's just really wonderful to hear that overall structure and narrated in the beautiful way that you do. That's just really inspiring to hear, that larger picture again, that we, in our day-to-day work, you kind of get stuck in the particular task that you're doing, and it's just so nice to be brought back to the bigger picture and feeling that, you know, that we're working as part of a really wonderful, supportive team. So it's really beautiful to see that. And what you say about purpose, it's totally true. That gets me through a lot, and it's really important. So I feel I don't know, just a very strong connection with the purpose of this project. So it's nice to hear that too. And another comment that stuck with me is that feeling of that impatience that we've got at the start to just, you know, just chill. It's so important that this is done properly. And so that's really good to hear, because that's a feeling that I've been having as well. It's like, we're going so slow, and like, oh, like, how are we gonna, you know, get to these really important goals that we want to get to? And it's really good to hear that that's a, you know, it's not just it's a shared feeling that it's okay to, you know, it's okay for things to go slowly if it's because we're trying to do it the right way. So so thanks so much. And last thing is that I think it's a really good idea to, you know, the way you're welcoming us to try to connect more across the themes, because it's obvious that there's so many connections and overlap among all the different projects, and in this kind of COVID world, it's been tricky to connect. How wonderful it would be if we were able to have these meetings in person, right? So I really look forward to at some point, I don't know how or when, but being able to connect with all of you in person a little bit more, and being able to chat about these things. Yeah, so thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Marta. That's so awesome to hear. I think this is my first time in a core, and I know people like Anne-Marie have grown up in cores, raised by the core. But my understanding of the goal of a core is that the projects are actually just quite a small part of what a core brings, but it brings a community, and it's important. You know, we can't pretend that academic life is an easy one by any measure, and so having a community that is aligned, that you can return to, particularly if it's aligned with your values, that you can return to as a place of I guess realigning yourself, or kind of go, oh no, hang on, this is what I'm about, not crazy department thing that's happening right now, arguments in the tea room, whatever. We can come back to, you know, research spaces and research collaborations that are really aligned with who we really hope to be as researchers. And I think as we build our profile, our websites, we managed to get more of our students and postgrads and to be able to come along to things like this. I think for me that would be one of the big value adds of a core is that sense of coming to things like this and actually have energy poured into you, instead of the other places where you kind of, I've got to pour energy into, you know, this kind of discussion and things. So I think that's probably been the most exciting thing about the core for me is the potential to just, you know, have amazing conversations and share ideas and help each other through this particular weird career that, unless you come from an academic family, if you're like me, the only person who's walking around in this mad place from my family. So just that support for each other as well. Kia ora.
Well, you've done a great job, Rose. And awesome to hear people's reflections too on Rose's presentation and how everything fits together. And that's the exciting thing with having a new core is that we get to rewrite the story and we get to create it for what we want it collectively to be. And so that's a really exciting part, and kind of what sits at the heart of a core is an opportunity for collaborative research too, and also they have to have a strong capability and capacity building component because they're funded from the Tertiary Education Commission. So they're quite different to a Marsden or MB or Health Research Council funding and others, that it has to be collaborative research, has to be research excellence, capability building, and well, for us, we add in sustainability as well. And so it's, because we're a year almost, rolling over a year on the 1st of July. And so it's exciting to being able to see, we're sort of talking about we have an establishment review next week that the leadership team are going through, looking at just resetting a few things, making sure, some things have taken longer, some things have been able to be quicker, and ironing out a few kinks and things like that you really only know when it's running, coming out of the aspirational stuff around the excitement of bidding and all of that, and then now being into, we're running this now, we have, and how it's exciting how it's taking on its own life, much beyond what you have in a bid too, and that's the really exciting space that we're in, and trying to have the longer term view too, is some of the stuff that we're leading into for next week, and good timing as well. With Matariki now too, and then that we get to forecast out for the next year, and all of the things that will bring too. So thank you very much again, Rose. A wonderful presentation as always. And for others who, I know we've got some other theme leaders on here too. So this is the gist really of this presentation, so the idea was that we'd have a couple of presentations-ish from different projects that sit within the themes, opportunity for people to share their work, and then we put in one from the theme leaders, sort of talking the overall scope around it, and then starting to be able to hopefully make some of those connections across as we see the core in its whole, or the whole canoe of the research program trying to come together, and then in time ideally traveling to the same island. But at the moment we're wanting to build the canoe, and aspects of it are traveling somewhere and traveling somewhere, and over time we'll hopefully be arriving at the same island. But that's the cool thing with being grounded in wayfinding leadership, is that that's not a scary prospect. So that's there's a well-known whakatauki, e kore te waka e whakapakari runga i te waimarino, which I share quite often. A canoe is not strengthened in calm waters. And so that's the idea too, which is what we are in, and the positive things of what we're in setting up a new anything to this scope. But let's give Rose a big clap or a virtual clap, whatever it might be, and just to say thank you, and thank you everybody for jumping on as well to be able to listen to Rose for this. And let's have, if there are no other comments or korero, then I'll bring up our where are you? I don't know if other people are like this, but I really always have far too many things opened up. And we can say this together again. And you would have heard me. I need to remember to not say things so quickly. Let me just bring it back up. So that I remember when I was learning for myself as a second language speaker of Te Reo, and now a fluent speaker, I remembered when I was trying to learn things that it's very hard when people say things really quickly. And so that's a conscious thing I try to do, is not to say things quickly. So I was saying this super quickly, and then I said to myself, you're saying that too quickly, and then did an intentional slow down. So anyway, let us say this prayer together. Me kara kia tahi tātou. Haia te awa, puta I tua, puta I waho, I te pakiaka o te rākau, o maere nuku, o maere raki, o maere o te māra whenua, I ruka tāne, I raro tāne, te raki ihi o tāne, paku paku o tāne, nohoka o te ariki, hoatu e tāne ki uta. And it's a beautiful karakia, and it's always nice to hear the Kaitahu dialect as well, to see the Ngaitahu dialect with the Ks, just to honour mana whenua, all the people from the place, certainly in the southern part of the South Island where many of us live. But thank you everybody for jumping on, and kia ora anō to you, Rose. Have a great day, and also have whatever you might be doing to celebrate the end of the Māori year, the end of the Māori New Year. An exciting thing too, Matariki holiday obviously next week, but an exciting thing for people to be able to create new traditions too in their